Hey guys, it's been way too long since I've done a video on hilarious phonies in Scrabble, so I'm very excited to announce that today the series resumes. This is going to be a relatively short installment where I break down my 5 favorite phonies of the summer. Some of these are very notable and high profile, and some of them are just downright hilarious or stupid. Either way, it's going to be a fun ride, so buckle up and enjoy. Our first 2 phonies of this video were actually successfully played by the same player in the same game. We're going to start off with a match between Tracy Cobbs and Rishab Murali at the 2026 Scrabble Players Championship in Division 2 in round 25. Tracy was first and he had an excellent opening rack, EGILOR blank. He's got like 6 or 7 valid bingos here, but of course he plays an invalid one, glowier, with a blank W. Now, this phony is not notable because it's so crazy or outlandish. In fact, I've seen this phony played both successfully and unsuccessfully multiple times. What makes this phony so notable is that Tracy had so many valid options he could have played instead for the same score, including common words such as godlier or glories. And presumably, a large reason Rishab did not challenge this is because he saw Tracy had all of these other valid words, and he was thinking, well, why would Tracy make one up if he could have played a comparable valid word? So I think the biggest lesson here, guys, is don't be afraid to challenge a play just because you see your opponent had similar valid options. Remember, even experts are worse at Scrabble than you think. Words are hard, Scrabble is hard, and if you really think something isn't a word, just trust yourself and challenge it. A few turns later, Rishab would bingo himself and draw even, but Tracy then bingoed again with legated, which is, by the way, a valid word. However, Rishab struck right back with the nice overlap play of Esserine for 77 points, and found himself once again with a small lead. However, it was short-lived, as in this position, with no valid bingos, Tracy strikes back with the phony of Lorelai's for 77 points, which Rishab once again does not challenge. Now, this one is definitely a lot more on the outrageous end of the spectrum than glowier. It is not a word, it does not resemble a valid word, and the closest thing I can come up with is Lorelei is a proper noun without the S. It is a German maiden of folklore, but it's a proper noun. Proper nouns, again, are not valid in Scrabble unless they have another non-proper noun meaning. So Lorelei is not acceptable, and Loreleis as a plural, after all, there was only one Lorelei anyway in German folklore, certainly not acceptable, but despite all that, it gets through and stays on the board. Nevertheless, despite all this, Rishab in the end would actually go on to win a nail-biter, 478 to 477 by just a single point, so perhaps some karma for those 2 phonies staying on the board. Either way, what a game. Let's now move on from that game to a different game played at this summer's Scrabble Players Championship. And this phony also was not that outrageous. I think it was more just surprising to the commentators and everyone who was watching as it took place on the live stream. This game was played between 2 of the absolute best players in the game, Joey Malik and Nigel Peltier. These are both names that my loyal viewers are surely familiar with. Nigel Peltier, the 2025 Scrabble Players Champion, and Joey Malik, a longtime top player and Blitz Battle rival of mine, and the 2023 Scrabble Players Championship runner-up. Joey was first, and he had a clunky opening rack, DEFHKMT. He has some okay valid plays here. He could also even exchange, but he plays a phony 4, KEF, KHEF, for 28 points. And amazingly, Nigel doesn't even flinch and lets this stay on the board. Now, there are a lot of similar looking words, such as KHAF and KEF, and a few others that I'll list on the screen, so it is understandable that someone could confuse those and create KHEF, which again is not a word out of it, but it was just particularly surprising, again, given the caliber of these players. These are 2 of the absolute best players in the game, and most people would expect that they have a rock-solid grasp on their short words like the 4s. So, just another reminder, guys, Scrabble is really hard. There are a lot of words, and it's hard to keep track of it, so even the best in the game do slip up sometimes, and don't feel bad if you make a mistake here and there yourself. Now, in case you guys still don't believe me that even the best players in the game do make word knowledge mistakes, let's take a look at a game I myself played at this summer Scrabble Players Championship against my friend Sam Kaplan. I had the first move with an opening rack of ACLNOPY. And in this position, I very nearly made my best valid move, Canopy, for 34 points, which is a very solid play, getting me off to a strong start. But as I was about to play this, I looked a little harder and was like, wait a minute, why am I doing that? I have Polycan for 84. That's obviously better. So I quickly put this down. And it turns out this is actually not a valid word, guys, and I caught a huge break in that Sam did not challenge, and it stayed on the board. And to be absolutely clear, this was in no way, shape, or form an intentional phony. I genuinely thought this was good when I saw it and thus quickly played it. And it took me a little while, but I eventually figured out why I thought this was a word. So if you add an S to this rack that I had, it makes a valid 8-letter word. But that valid 8-letter word is not polycans, of course, it is syncopal. And I historically, for some reason, have a really hard time finding the word syncopal, and I have a pattern of erroneously typing in polycans whenever I see that set of letters on Ziziva or Aerolith, either of the two study tools I use to review words. And I think just after having drilled the muscle memory of typing in the phony of polycans instead of syncopal so many times, that just got in my head. And when I saw this, I was like, wait a minute, I'm just an S away from polycans, so I have polycans, so I should obviously just play that. Well, needless to say, this very nearly bit me, and I got a huge break that didn't come off the board, so hopefully this will be a lesson learned, and I will not ever again think polycan or polycans is a valid word. I'd also like to give a shout out to another top player who came up with a really hilarious fake definition of polycan. Take a look at the image here on the screen. I got a good laugh out of this when I received this text from him. I hope you guys will too. The final example of this video is, in my opinion, without a doubt, the most downright hilarious and silly. It's also the only one that didn't happen at the Scrabble Players Championship. It happened a week later at a tournament I ran in my hometown of Lexington, Kentucky. This was a game played between my good friend and longtime expert Ken Rubin and up-and-coming player John Healy. John was actually crushing Ken this game. As you guys can see, with just 16 tiles in the bag, John was up 166 points, 320 to 154. However, in this position, Ken found a very nice bingo that gave him a glimmer of hope to come back and win this game. He played Bethank and Webb for 92 points, bringing his deficit to 74, and putting John in a tough spot with two lines now open, namely through the K on column O, and on the bottom hooking Webb to make webs. However, there's only one problem. As you guys can see, Ken did not play Bethank, he played Bethak with two Ks. Now you're probably thinking, how on earth does this possibly happen? Well, here's the thing, guys. When you play a blank in a Scrabble tournament, there is a sheet on the table, and you have to circle with a pen the letter that you are making the blank. And here, maybe just because he got the K that the word was ending in his head, Ken erroneously circled the K instead of the N, and as such, the word he played was not Bethank, which is valid in what he intended to play, but Bethak, which is, of course, not a real word. And this is where things go from funny to just absolutely bizarre. John notices that Ken made the blank a K and immediately puts the play on hold, considering challenging. John is clearly quite dubious of this play's validity. After all, Bethak with two Ks at the end sounds absolutely ridiculous. In fact, there are 0 7-letter words, or frankly, words of any length in the Scrabble dictionary that end in two Ks that are valid. And the amazing thing here is that John, despite realizing what Ken did and thinking for several minutes, decides to let this play go. John figured that Ken is a much stronger player than him and decided to show some deference to Ken's word knowledge, thinking, well, maybe Bethak is just some crazy, ridiculous, low probability word that Ken happens to know. And in John's defense, that is not a crazy idea here, because this play also gave John a very strong comeback of Javas for over 50 points, really locking up the game. And the funny thing is, Ken here still is completely oblivious to what he had done, because in this position, Ken plays Rye for 30 points in the bottom right. And that's a good play, but he has a much better play, Inia, which scores 12 more and also unduplicates his ends. But remember, guys, Ken does not think that blank is a K. He thinks it's an N. And Inia, in that case, is not valid because Ni would not be a valid two-letter word. So Ken, at this point, again, is still completely oblivious to what he has done, ends up playing Rye here, and when all is said and done, John would go on to comfortably win this game 432 to 315. And what's so amazing about this one, guys, is people do misdesignate blanks here and there. I have past examples in other videos of that happening. But I don't think I've ever seen a case where someone misdesignates a blank to make an absolutely ridiculous phony, and their opponent realizes what they've done and still fails to challenge. It's just so hilarious, and we all could not stop laughing about it after this happened. So with that in mind, guys, I would like to thank all of you for watching this video and for all of your support. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all soon for the next one. Bye-bye.